is a somewhat artist rendition of it, kind of a cutaway, kind of give you a picture of it. I want to focus on, in this chapter, he's going to talk about the furnishing of the temple, and it is quite extensive. Excuse me. It is quite extensive. This temple took 7 years to build, and so we're gonna. The last time we talked about the structure itself, as you can kind of see, somewhat, and now we're going to talk about really charges things with gold. All the utensils were gold, and I don't know how accurate this rendition is here, but anyway, it just kind of gives us an idea. But there was so much stuff, and later on when we um, so let's see here first. Chapter 7. All right. So it says Solomon's complex, his entire palace complex, after 13 years of construction. I'm sorry, Solomon completed his entire complex after 13 years. So he spent 7 years building. Well, his palace was 13 years, I believe, and then the temple was seven years. So verse 2, he built the house of the forest of Lebanon with 150 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet really high, on 4 rows of cedar pillars with cedar beams on top of the pillars. It was paneled above with cedars at the top of the chambers that rested on 45 pillars, 15 per row. And there were 3 rows of window frames facing each other in 3 tiers. All the doors and door posts had rectangular frames and openings facing each other, 3 tiers. He made a hall of pillars, 75 feet long and 45 feet wide. A portico was in front of the pillars, and a canopy of pillars was in front of them. He made the hall of thrones where he would judge. So you can almost say this was sort of like the city hall in addition to his palace too. Verse 7, he made the hall of thrones where he would judge, the hall of judgment, and it was paneled with cedar from the floor to the rafters. Solomon's own palace where he would live, and the other courtyard behind the hall with similar construction. He made a house like that, like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, his wife. Now, again, remember this marriage, first and foremost, shouldn't have been. He did not need to do that. He did it because of treaty. A lot of times these marriages were made for treaty purposes. My thing would be that he didn't need to do it. God would have protected him. God would have cared for him. But and especially Egypt, having this kind of alliance with Egypt. Verse 9, all of these buildings were of costly stones, cut to size and sawed with saws on the inner and outer surfaces, from the foundation to coping and the outside of the great courtyard. The foundation was made of large costly stones, 12 and 15 feet long. Now, that's why I said that artist rendition that I showed you did not kind of seem to reflect those stones. And remember, these stones were carved and cut outside and then shipped and then put in place. Above were also costly stones cut to size, as well as cedar woods, around the great courtyard, as well as the inner courtyard of the Lord's temple, the protocol of the temple, with 3 rows of dressed stone and a row of trim cedar beams. King Solomon had Hiram brought from Tyre. He was a widow's son from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a bronze craftsman. Hiram had great skill, understanding, and knowledge to do every kind of bronze work, so he came to King Solomon and carried out all his work. If you remember too, back God would give these people wisdom, even with the construction of the tabernacle. God gave them skills to do all of these kind of crafts. Verse 15, he cast 2 hollow bronze pillars, each 27 feet high and 18 feet in circumference. He also made 2 capital cast bronze to set on top of the pillars, 7.5 feet was this height of the first capital, and 7.5 feet was also the height of the second capital. The capital on top of the pillars had gratings of lattice work, wreaths made of chain work, 7 for the first capital, 7 for the second. He made pillars with 2 encircling rows of pomegranates, and on the grating to cover the capital on top. He did the same for the second capital, and the capital on top of the pillars in the protocol was shaped like lilies, 6 feet high, and the capitals on the 2 pillars were also immediately above the rounded surfaces next to the grating. The 200 pomegranates were in rows encircling each capital. He set up the pillars of the portico of the sanctuary, and he set up a right pillar and named it Jason. He set up the left pillar and named it Boaz. The top of the pillars were shaped like lilies, and the work of the pillars were complete. I don't know if Boaz had anything to do, which would have been like his great grandfather. Verse 23, he made the cast metal reservoir 15 feet from brim to brim, perfectly round. It was 7.5 feet high and 45 feet in circumference. Ornamental gourds encircled it above the brim, 10 every half yard, completely encircling the reservoir. Gourds were cast in 2 rows, and the reservoir was cast 25, and it stood 12. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, 3 facing east, and the reservoir was on top of them, and all of their hindquarters were towards the center. Now, I'm going to kind of go back just a moment just to kind of show you somewhat what he is talking about. On the bottom row there, you see those the big large kind of pot, and then you see, as they're saying, the cattle there like towards the bottom. Let me see here if I can get that up a little bit. Yeah, okay. Like I say, some of these stones, so I don't know if it's accurate sizing or scaling, but again, you kind of see, you have to look at this, and at least to me, you have to kind of see this. I know I'm reading through this really fast, but it is, quite detailed. It's quite detailed, and again, just to have a kind of a visual idea of what's going on there. Verse 25 again, it stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, 3 facing east. The reservoir was on top of them, and all of their hindquarters were towards the center. We saw that. The reservoir was 3 inches thick, and its rim was fashioned like a brim of a cup of the lily blossom. It held 11,000 gallons. So we saw that big kind of, as they said, cup or pot sitting on these oxen. Then he made 10 bronze water carts. Each water cart was 6 feet long, 6 feet wide, and 4.5 feet high. This was the design of the carts. They had frames, and frames were between the cross pieces, and on the frames between the cross pieces were lions, oxen, and cherubim. And on the cross pieces there was the pedestal above and below, the lions and the oxen and the wreaths and the work. Again, I'll give you a quick view of this right there along the bottom left. That's what he's talking about. Okay. All right. 30. Each cart had 4 bronze wheels and bronze axles underneath. With 4 corners, the basins were cast support each next to the wreath, and the water carts opening inside the crown at the top were 18 inches wide. The opening was round and made as a pedestal, 27 inches wide. On it were carvings, and their frames were square, not round. There were 4 wheels under the frames, and the wheel axles were part of the water cart. Each wheel was 27 inches tall. The wheels' design was similar to that of chariot wheels. Their axe rims, spokes, and hubs were all of cast metal. 4 supports were 4 corners of each water cart. Each support was one piece with the water cart. At the top of the cart was a band 9 inches high encircling it. Also, top of the cart, its frames were pieces. With it, he engraved cherubim, lions, and palm trees, and the plates on his braces and on his frames, wherever each had space with the encircling wreath. In this way, he made 10 water carts using the same casting dimensions and the shape of all of them. Now, what is interesting is the wisdom, by the way, that Solomon used to design this and to make this. God gave him this wisdom. Then he made 10, verse 38, then he made 10 bronze basins, each basin holding 220 gallons, and each was 6 feet wide, 1 basin for each of the 10 water carts. He set 5 water carts on the right side of the temple and 5 on the left side. He put the reservoir near the right side of the temple towards the south. Then Hiram made basins, shovels, and sprinkled basins. So Hiram finished all the work that he was doing for King Solomon in the Lord's temple. 2 pillars, bowls for the capitals were on top of the pillars, the 2 gratings for the covering, both bowls, and all of the capital that were on top of the pillars. The 400 pomegranates for the 2 gratings, 2 rows of pomegranates for each grating covered both capital bowls on top of the pillars. The 10 water carts, 10 basins, water carts, reservoirs, 12 oxen underneath the reservoir, and the pots, shovels, and sprinkling basins. All the utensils that Hiram made for King Solomon at the Lord's temple was made of burnished bronze. The king had them cast in clay molds in the Jordan Valley between Sukkah and Zarethan. Solomon left all the utensils unweighed because there were so many, and the weight of the bronze was not determined. Now again, I want to kind of go back and kind of give you just a visual. I don't know if they show all of the utensils and stuff that he made there. I don't know if I'm trying to see if you picture that. There was so much in this here that was made. I don't think it's not pictured here. But again, the wisdom in which he made this, and this was, again, it was at the time one of the most spectacular. It would have been the architectural digest dream. Okay. Verse 48, Solomon also made all the equipment in the Lord's temple, all the gold altar, the gold table, and the bread of the presence was placed on it, the pure gold lampstand in front of the inner sanctuary, 5 on the right and 5 on the left, the gold flowers, lamp, and the tongs, the pure gold ceremonial bowls, wick, trimmers, sprinkled basins, fire pans, and the gold hinges for the doors in the inner temple, that is the most holy place, and for the doors of the temple sanctuary. So all of the work Solomon did in the Lord's temple was completed. Then Solomon brought the consecrated things of his father David, the silver, the gold, and utensils, and he put them in the treasuries of the Lord's temple. So again, this thing here is spectacular when you take a look at it. And just, again, this is just an artist's rendition based upon all of those two chapters, 6 and 7. And again, I don't think they're even showing half of the shovels and all of that. Now this is just the temple. I don't know if you can kind of cut back and you can see, if you can see back there, the cherubims. I'm trying to look right there. The cherubims. Let's see. Yeah. But again, just think about all of this. That we can see why it took. I'm trying to pull up. I'm gonna pull up, trying to see if I can pull this up here. It's palace. I'm gonna see if we can pull this up. Let's see here. I'm gonna try to see if I can pull up his palace. That's the temple, but then the palace. A couple of images here. That's not what I'm looking for, but but he had a spectacular thing. But I'm gonna want to show you if I can pull this up. He had a spectacular throne that we'll see later. And this thing here, this throne was just like unbelievable. It's got all the temples that I'm showing there. But I mean, the gold, look at the gold walls there. The gold walls. Oh, I'm trying to see if I can find one, but kind of a picture of his palace, but I can't find one there. All right, anyway, but that is the temple that he built. Took him 7 years, and then he also had his throne. Now you see the steps right here, but this is just like in the temple there. I'm trying to see here, but if you can kind of get the color is great on here because you see all of the gold. And like I say, when Nebuchadnezzar raided it, and actually throughout history we're going to see that they raided this. There was so much stuff here. They're not even pitching it half. But there was so much stuff in it. All of it was gold, mostly gold, and then silver. Later we're going to see